Minute to have our speaker tonight, a very special person. I want to just introduce him by reading something to you from a very old Jewish work on ethics called The Ways of the Righteous. I want to read just the first page, and I think that will be a very appropriate introduction to the speaker. This work was written about 800 years ago. So it's quite authentic. All right, the author begins by quoting from King Solomon. King Solomon, we know, is King David's son. And King Solomon writes in he has a number of works that he put together that we have passed down as part of the Torah. And the work that he's quoting from over here is from Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes. And he writes a long, all his thoughts and experiences about life, and he wraps it up at the end with one line. And the author of this book, which was written 800 years ago, is quoting King Solomon of that last line. And the line goes like this. The end of everything, bottom line, after all said and done, the only thing that matters is standing in awe before God and keeping the commandments. That's where he starts off the book. And then he goes on to discuss who King Solomon is to say such a line. And he tells us about King Solomon being the greatest king that ever lived, the most powerful, the most wealthy. He had so many horses and wives, and he was the wisest man that ever lived, I think. Even secular and non-Jewish sources are aware of this, that many kings and queens traveled all over the world to visit him and discuss wisdom with him. So the author of this book is making the following observation. He's saying, King Solomon, who's been there and done that, who had it all, he ruled the world, makes the following statements about life. And he says, if some guy in the street would get up and start yelling on the soapbox about, oh, believe in God, oh, be religious, do this and that. So you look at him and you say, well, the guy's a loser, he has nothing else to do. This guy on campus, Brother Micah. So he yells out there, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, and, So when he walks by, you laugh. He's a lunatic, the guy. So if you see some homeless man in the street yelling and screaming about, you just assume he doesn't know what it's like to live a good life. He never experienced and tasted the good life, and that's why he's yelling about the God stuff and all this. King Solomon, he was the man. He had everything, money, intelligence, power. He had it all. And he's telling you, after all his experiences, using his great wisdom, nothing else to life but these values. Stand in awe before God, fear God, and keep the commandments. I think it's appropriate to say that our speaker tonight, Mr. Veingrad, is the King Solomon of today in a certain sense, that he's been there. He was a NFL player, 5 years with Green Bay, 2 years with the Dallas Cowboys. He has won Super Bowl. He's experienced the life that anybody can dream of, power, money, fame, whatever it is, and still came to the realization that this is not it. There's much more to life than this. So I want to thank him for coming, and without any further ado,
Thank you, Rabbi. Those were some beautiful words. I'm not sure I'm the person to receive such words, but I certainly appreciate it. Familiar face. So the number one trait in all of sports that is absolutely devastating is jealousy. Jealousy would rip apart any team. If players are jealous of the other players, the team is going to fail regardless. On any level, in any organization, if there's jealousy, it would be terrible. I'm going to tell you, most often on Monday mornings or Tuesday mornings, if we played Monday nights, it would take me a number of minutes to get out of bed. I'd be black and blue head to toe, and many times I'm speaking, rabbis and people that are not familiar with the National Football League asking what it's like, and quite often I tell them, back up about 25 yards and run into a wall 75 times. That's exactly what it's like. And when you wake up the next day and you're black and blue from head to toe, you'll experience what I experienced on the day after the game, and 2 days after the game is even worse. So the first thing I would do after I get out of bed is I go to my freezer where I would always pack bags of ice. Ice is a magical, magical thing. I take these bags of ice. And I'd strap them to my body. They'd go on my neck, my shoulders, my knees, my back. Wherever I could put ice, I'd wrap them around my body like a mummy to start to relieve some of the pain that my body's experiencing. The second thing I would do is I go to the front of my home, I'd grab the local paper because I had to see what the beat writers are saying about my team. But really, what did I want to do? I'm black and blue. My knees are bleeding. My elbows are bleeding, falling on the AstroTurf. I wanted to see if they said anything about me. And quite often, fortunately, I played on some pretty good football teams. They'd always talk about the great quarterback, Troy Aikman. He threw 25 times, completed 22, 252 yards, 2 touchdowns. The great Emmitt Smith rushed the ball 25 times, 162 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the great Michael Irvin, he caught 10 passes, 2 touchdowns, 115 yards, and the Dallas Cowboys win. And I'm reading it, scanning, looking for my name. And I never saw my name. Offensive lineman is a thankless position. The only time you get your name called, that is if you do something wrong. But I was trained at a very, very early age that my job is as important as anybody else's job. And if I was ever jealous of my teammates' position, I wouldn't be a very good teammate. So I relished the fact, looking at those guys and looking at their names up in lights. I knew my name was a part of that as well. Jealousy is a really bad trait in sports. But we know God controls everything, created everything, and I think there's a good jealousy. For every one of the students that are in this room, the words of Torah that you're receiving at your age, I'm jealous of you. I ran from the Torah. I had no idea the Torah is a battery pack. The Torah is a roadmap. The Torah enriches your life. And I didn't realize that until years after I retired from playing in the National Football League. By way of introduction, I was born in Brooklyn. Anybody else from Brooklyn here? I've never given a speech, and I've given over 1,000 when somebody did not clap. And the year was 1972. I was 9 years old. You can do the math. My family relocated to South Florida. This is my hometown, Miami. 1972 was a profound year in professional sports, certainly in football. Does anybody know what happened in 72 in the world of professional football?
Miami Dolphins undefeated season.
Who said that? You get the first football. I was 9 years old. I got to witness the Miami Dolphins to go on and win every single game. And as a young 9-year-old boy, they became my entire life. And my father, blessed memory, bought season tickets the following year and would take me and my brother to every one of the games. I loved professional football. And also at the age of 9 years old, I was going to public school. And I was schlepped to Hebrew school. Every Tuesday and Sunday, kicking and screaming to learn the most boring subject on the planet, the history of the Jewish people. And some of the older guys are smiling. I think they grew up like I did. I was your typical American Jewish kid growing up. My mother said you have to become a bar mitzvah, so I became a bar mitzvah. And quite often when she would drive me to this particular Hebrew school, Temple Zion on Mill Road in Miami, I would not go inside. I would stand out in the parking lot and wave to my mom. And when she got out of sight, I got out of sight. I walked across the street to this beautiful lake, Tropical Park, and I would skip rocks in the lake. Because what was going on inside was not fun and exciting to me. It was not inspiring. The people that were teaching me were the age of my great-grandparents. They didn't like me. And I didn't like them. But I learned just enough to become a bar mitzvah boy, and the bar mitzvah is, and the fact is, and the bar mitzvah is, and the fact is, in this country, it's the exit out of Judaism. It's not the entrance into Judaism for most American Jews. Once that bar mitzvah happens, or that bar mitzvah happens, most parents stop with the building fund. They stopped with the dues, and as a family, we moved on, which allowed me more time in my hands to get into a lot of trouble. And I realized after getting in trouble for 1 year that I never saw my older brother because he never came home from school, because he immersed himself in sports, football, basketball, wrestling. He was a great athlete. And I never saw this guy, so I realized I better do the same exact thing, but being 6'5", 180 pounds, what could I do? Not a lot in the world of sports. But I knew I had to build my body up, so I went to the strength coach of my high school, and I said to Coach Chuck Almeida, Coach, I want to lift weights. Can you show me how to become powerful and strong? He said, I can show you. Now this coach was only 5'5". 5'5". This guy was an authority on the subject of strength training, and I knew it. And the first day I walked into the weight room to start pumping iron with him, he said to me, come back tomorrow. I said, Coach, when I'm dressed out, I'm ready to go. He said, but when you come tomorrow, you'll be prepared because I want you to bring a notebook and a pencil. I'm 14 years old. He said, you got to be prepared for the weight room. And if I teach you how to prepare yourself for the weight room, you'll be prepared for life. I'm like, Coach, what are you talking about? He says, I'll see you tomorrow. I come back the next day and he makes me a student of the weight room. He says, before you do any exercise, we're going to write it down. Everything we do in the weight room, we're going to write down. Push days, pull days, heavy days, light days, and we're going to study it, and 12 weeks later, we're going to evaluate where you are, and we're going to make slight changes to your workout plan. We became best friends, and he taught me the technique of how to become strong. And I lifted, and I lifted, and I lifted, and that profound lesson of preparation has taken me real far in my life, that you know if you prepare yourself well, you're going to win the deal. If you prepare yourself well, you're going to become big and strong. If you prepare yourself well, you're going to get an A on the test. And he taught me that lesson at 14. So I pumped and I pumped and I pumped. To the point where I remember after school, I never went home because I was always lifting weights. But unfortunately, I wasn't a great football player. But I had a burning desire to play college football. And when you're a Jewish boy playing football in South Florida and you're not that good, how do you get marketed to other colleges outside the state? You hire the services of your mother, of course. I remember as a high school kid, I came home and I said, Mom, Dad, check out my high school football resume. And they looked at it and they said, what do we do with it? I said, well, the coach made it for me. You got to market me to colleges. So my mom said, I'll do that for you. I said, I know, Mother. So she sent this resume to colleges all over the country. Florida, Florida State, Miami, Ohio State, Arkansas, USC, UCLA, Arizona, Arizona State. You name the major college program, they got my high school football resume. And I didn't get one phone call. A friend of a friend told my mother, if you send one to East Texas State University, on occasion they recruit B-caliber athletes, maybe they'll give your son a scholarship. My mom immediately sent one to East Texas State. The coach called and said, this is Coach Ernest Hawkins of East Texas State University, and we have your son's resume, and we have interest in your son. Send us some films. We sent the films. The coach awards me a scholarship to go to East Texas State, located 65 miles northeast of Dallas, Texas, in the Bible Belt of the United States of America. And here's the newsflash. It's not our Bible. They've never met an Alan Veingrad from Miami via Brooklyn, New York before. When I arrived on campus, the coach said, you're an offensive lineman. Go with the offensive lineman, the biggest guys on the team, and do whatever they do. 65 miles northeast of Dallas, Texas, in the Bible Belt of the United States of America, I am the only Jew on campus. And I heard quite often from my teammates, I never met a Jew before. And I argue with people all over the world, I never one time experienced any anti-Semitism. These are good Christian Bible people that were interested in me and my religion of being a Jew. But I had a very, very poor education as it relates to being Jewish. But my mother, blessed memory, would be angry at me if I didn't tell you that she would light candles on Friday nights. She did the best she could do. And as a family, we always got together for Passover to have matzah, but no one had any words of inspiration ever, and she always gave us 8 presents for Hanukkah. And now I'm at East Texas State University. My teammates are always asking me about being Jewish, and quite often I couldn't answer those questions, so what would I do? I would do what you would do. You'd call home and ask your mother. Well, between us here, my mother also skipped Hebrew school. So she would tell me to call Bubby. Bubby has the answers. I would call Bubby on occasion, and she would tell me the answers, so I could tell my teammates about me being a Jew. By the second year at East Texas State, following the offensive line, I built myself up to about 240 pounds. I became a pretty good football player at East Texas State University. And the coach wanted to know what my goals are, what my dreams are, what my desires are. I said, I want to be team captain, All-American. I want to start every single game. I want to be all-conference. He said, those are great goals, Alan. What else? I said, that's it. He said, what about the National Football League? I said, what about the National Football League? He said, how come it's not your goal? How come it's not your dream? How come it's not your desire? I said, Coach, because I saw the Miami Dolphins as close as we're sitting here today. I was a skinny little Jewish kid in the end zone pulling up the net. And when the game ended, I got to see the Miami Dolphins. Don't take this the wrong way. Take off their jerseys, their shoulder pads, and their T-shirts. I went into the locker room because I wanted to see their power and their size. And I realized at 15, I'm not playing in the NFL. If you fast forward 4 years, I have my football coach in college telling me, you got what it takes. You might want to prepare yourself for the National Football League because they're going to come get you. You're kidding me, Coach. So I worked and I worked and I worked. If you read the book, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which I read a few years ago, and I thought, that is my life. It's about putting in hours for true success. Those that put in the hours will have a greater chance of success. And for whatever reason, I put in all those hours in the weight room on the football field. And by the time my senior year came around, I accomplished all my goals. And the coach came down to the weight room and says, Alan, the Jewish press just sent me a letter. They want me to tell them that you're Jewish. I remember you telling me once that you're a Jew. Are you Jewish? I said, I am, Coach. I said, Coach, I'm the only Jew on the team, the only Jew on campus of 8,000. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no, I'm not kidding you. He says, why does the Jewish press want to know about you? I said, I have no idea. He says, you got to come with me. We got to go call the Jewish press. So he takes me out of the weight room, goes down to his office, and he dials up the Jewish press. And he says in his Texas twang, this is Coach Ernest Hawkins of East Texas State, and I'm here with my star offensive lineman, Alan Veingrad, who just told me he's Jewish. And then he says, now why do you want to know? And the Jewish press says, because Alan Veingrad just made first team Jewish All-American. And I strongly believe that any kid that plays college football will make that first team as well. As we know, we represent a very, very small segment at that level and an even smaller one in the National Football League. I was cut by the Buccaneers and the Houston Oilers, and I made the Green Bay Packers the following year. 6'5", 285, and you're fired by the Buccaneers and the Oilers. Can you imagine? You're fired, you're no good, go home, we don't want you. And I realized it wasn't that I wasn't good enough, but I wasn't smart enough. No one ever taught me the key techniques to play at that level. When I got to Green Bay, the coach said, all you rookie free agent, nobody line, and stay in town, and you're going to learn the techniques from May mini camp to July training camp. And I stayed. And I picked up those techniques more than most. And unfortunately, sometimes that's still not enough. And one of the veteran offensive linemen saw me and said, Alan, let me talk to you about your eyes. He said, get down in your football stance. And I got down in my football stance. He said, what do you see in your stance? And I said, Mike, I see the grass. He said, you see the grass? I said, yeah, what do you see? He said, line up again. So I lined up again, and he pretended he was a defensive lineman, and he reached out with his big old palm, and he grabbed my face mask, and my eyes now went from the grass to him lined up across him. He said, what do you see now? I said, Mike, I see you. He said, you can't play at this level and not focus your eyes on your target. Alan, you got to become so focused and so crystal on the guy you're going to hit and break that down to a little part of their body before the ball is snapped, where your forehead's going to go, where your fists are going to go, where your hands are going to go. Learn to focus and you'll become extremely successful. And that one small trick enabled me to make the Green Bay Packers. And I believe that every single one of us has the ability to focus. Really, really focus on our target, and we'll hit the target every single time. 6 weeks later, I'm a starting offensive lineman for the Green Bay Packers. And I walked into the locker room, and I got a phone message note from the team secretary. To Alan Veingrad, call Lou Weinstein with a local Green Bay number. I have no idea who Lou Weinstein is. As a matter of fact, I'm the only Jew in the locker room, the only Jew I met in Green Bay that summer. Except, of course, if the media came in, or somebody brought in their sports agent or lawyer. The only Jew in the locker room. And who's calling me on the telephone? This guy, Lou Weinstein. I dial up Lou Weinstein. I say, Lou, what do you want? This is Alan Veingrad of the Green Bay Packers. Why are you calling me? He said, welcome to town. I said, what can I do for you? He said, Alan, congratulations on making the Green Bay Packers. "Where are you living?" I said, "Excuse me?" He says, "As a matter of fact, Alan, I think we should talk some business over lunch." I said, "What kind of business?" He says, "I don't like talking over the telephone." He tells me he wants to take me out to lunch at his country club. I said, "How do I get there?" He tells me how to get there. And my father once told me that if anybody invites you out to lunch and they're buying, you go. So I'm so perplexed that a stranger would call me and invite me out to lunch and want to talk business with me. At that time in my life, I had a net worth of $9. I got up the next morning, I put in 3 hours in the weight room, I drove across town. It was 72 degrees out, fall, not a cloud in the sky, and I pulled up to a country club, and I felt like I'd arrived as a Green Bay Packer, and now some guy's taking me out to lunch. I walk into this beautiful rustic country club, I see this old man waving his hand, I walk over to him, I said, "I'm Alan Veingrad, the Green Bay Packer." He says, "Yes, I know who you are, have a seat." The waiter comes over and says, "What can I get you, Mr. Weinstein?" He says, "I want a tuna sandwich and a cup of decaf, and you get my guest, Alan Veingrad, anything he wants." And I say, "Is that right?" The waiter gives me a menu and he stays at the table. I don't know about you, but I like the waiter to leave and come back 5 minutes later after I had a chance to read the entire menu, because I don't want to make a mistake. The waiter stands there and he says, "What do you want? What can I get you?" Lou says, "Please order lunch. We got a lot of business to talk about." So I look at the right side, I look at the left side, I look back at the right side, I look at Lou, I look at the waiter, and I say, "I want the entire right side, please." And I look at Mr. Weinstein, I said, "Lunch is on its way. Why did you invite me out here? What kind of business do you want to talk with me?" He said, "Alan, I'm a local businessman in Green Bay. I've been living here 30 years. I own a shoe store and a clothing store and real estate all over the state. And I read about you 3 or 4 weeks ago in the Jewish press that you are one of 5 Jews in the National Football League. And congratulations on making the team." It's like, wow, that's really nice of you. Thank you. He said, "Where are you living? Where are you staying? I know you guys broke training camp 2 weeks ago. Where are they housing you now?" I said, "Well, since we broke training camp, I'm staying in a motel right next to Lambeau Field, and it's a nasty place." He says, "I know the place. It is nasty. After lunch, we'll go eat the things. You'll come stay with me in my house with my wife. We have a 5-bedroom house. You'll have your own bedroom, your own bathroom." I said, "Mr. Weinstein, we just met. I can't stay with you." And he says, "Well, with your permission, can I get my realtor friend Ross Bluestein involved? I buy real estate for him, Halfstone, for 25 years. And we can move you out of that place and get you an apartment." I said, "I don't own anything. I've never gotten an apartment before. I don't know how to go about this." He said, "Bluestein will know what to do. And my wife and I will put some things together and help set you up." And I said, "You'll do that for me?" He says, "Sure, why wouldn't I?" He says, "Do you know anything about money?" I said, "No, I never had any before." He said, "Why don't we go meet my money manager after lunch?" I said, "What's this guy's name?" He says, "Scott Newman. He's a conservative investor." And if you're doing the math, I now have Weinstein, Bluestein, and Newman on my team. And Mr. Weinstein of blessed memory looks me in the eyeball and says, "Alan, 2 weeks from today is the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah. And I'm going to assume you're coming to synagogue with me, Newman, and Bluestein, and coming back to my house for lunch." And I'm thinking, you just laid out my entire life? How could I say no to that? Did I know what was going on that day? Absolutely not. Did I knew that there was an obligation and a privilege for a Jew to always look after another Jew? I had no idea. But for many years, we became very close. And being a lone Jew on the football team, I always had somebody in town that had my back. Anything I needed. Always the only Jew in the locker room. The team would always get together for the Lord's Prayer. I can't tell you how many times I heard the Lord's Prayer, and I would always hold my teammates' hand as they would say the Lord's Prayer, but I would never one time say it or kneel down. And I'd always pray to God and thank God that He gives me the ability to play at a high level to help me walk off the football field when the game would end. And my teammates started calling me the chosen one. "Alan, what's with your people, Alan? What's with the Jewish people? And how do you come into the National Football League making the league minimum and build net worth greater than guys that have been around there 3, 4, 5, 6 years more than you?" And I didn't know what else to tell them, that the Jewish people focus on education and success and family, and we're built to work extremely hard. And my lack and pride in Judaism started to come out, and I started to feel pretty good about being Jewish. Until my sports agent called, Steve Weinberg. And he said, "Alan, the Dallas Cowboys are offering you a major contract. You're finally going to make some real money. I said, I don't want to play for the Dallas Cowboys. I like Green Bay. I'm an offensive lineman. They have soft, natural grass, and it's cold up here. Offensive linemen run very well in that weather. He said, don't be a wise guy with me. I said, Steve, what do you want to know? I don't want to play for Dallas. I don't care what they're offering. He said, how many Jews are in Green Bay? I said, 95 families. Why are you asking? And he says, out of the 95, how many produced an eligible female? I said, Steve, I'm your only Jewish client. We've had matzah together at your Pesach table. What are you asking me this for? You know, 2 years ago they found one girl. We had 2 dates. She wasn't for me. He said, that's my point. I said, what's your point? He said, you are by far the ugliest guy that I know. Don't you think you should leave that little bitty town of Green Bay and come to Dallas, where there's a thriving Jewish community, and me and my wife are very involved in the community, and will help you find a wife? I said, you're making a good point. Tell me about that money again. I fly to Dallas. I sign a contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Steve lines up date 1, date 2, date 3. As a matter of fact, Mark Cuban and I were on stage at a bachelor auction, and I beat him. I just want you to know that might be my claim to fame. And after the 3rd date, I said, Steve, Jimmy Johnson is working us way too hard. I can't go on any more dates. 2 years after that, we won a world championship, which I'm wearing my Super Bowl ring. My Rolex watch that was given to me by Emmett Smith for helping him win a Russian title. And I was divinely inspired, I believe, to retire while I still can walk. Moved back to South Florida, met a Jewish girl, got married, moved to Weston, as the rabbi said in the introduction, which he's probably never heard me speak before. I started to live the good life. We built a big house in Weston on hole number 10, a par 3, and I started playing golf every single day, joined the country club, had our first child. I was living the life that anybody would want to live. And 2 years into retirement, I got a phone call from my cousin, Dr. Jonathan Ruman of Miami Beach. Hello, Alan, this is cousin Jonathan. We have nothing in common. He's an Orthodox Jew, but he's a doctor. And during my 7 years in the NFL, every time I'd get hurt, I would do what you would do. You call your mom. And the mom said, always send the films to cousin Jonathan. He's a radiologist. He'll tell you what to do. And for 7 years, he told me play or not to play. Now that I'm retired, we have nothing in common. I don't need him anymore. But he's reaching out to me to invite me to his house for Shabbos. And I've had an obligation for those 7 years of free medical advice. I went to his house with my wife and our first child. We drove from our home in Fort Lauderdale down to Miami Beach, knocked on the door. Cousin Jonathan opens up the door. I take one step inside and I said, Cousin Jonathan. He says, good Shabbos. I said, what is that smell? He said, it's Shabbos. I said, what are you talking about? He said, your cousin Abby's a gourmet cook. I said, oh my goodness, that smells unbelievable. He said, just wait. By this time, his 4 little rascal kids come running around the corner waving pieces of paper. I go, what are they waving? He said, it's Divrei Torah. I said, it's what? He said, it's words of Torah. They're going to teach us Torah at the table. I said, oh, I can't wait. So I meet my cousins for the first time. They start singing Shalom Aleichem. I can't sing. I don't know these words. Cousin Jonathan makes Kiddush. I heard Bray Guff and I said Amen. And he says, let's go. I said, where do you want to go? He says, we're going to wash. I said, I washed before I came. He said, no, come with me. I'll show you how to wash your hands before we receive the bread. I said, fine, whatever. He takes it to a sink. He shows me how to wash my hands. He tells me what to say. We go back to the table. He pulls back the challah cover, and these 2 football-shaped collars are sitting there waiting for me. He holds them up and makes a motzi, slices into it. The steam rises off the top. Cousin Jonathan gives me a piece. I take a bite and I say, Cousin Abby, these are so delicious. She said, Alan, help yourself. I said, good. So I reached out and I grabbed that second challah. And I held it in nice and tight. And I ate enough for 10 people that night. You name it, I ate it. And at the end of the meal, Cousin Jonathan says to me, so, would you be interested in going to a Torah class? I knew it. I said, yeah, I'll go to a Torah class. He said, good, because a rabbi will call you on Monday as he teaches in your neighborhood. Monday morning is a call from Rabbi Moshe Grunstein. Today, the young Israel rabbi of Bal Harbor, a wonderful, wonderful guy who does outreach all through South Florida back in those days. And he invites me to a Torah class, and I go to one Torah class hosted by a very, very successful doctor in Weston in a mansion. And during the 1-hour Torah class, I'm sitting there, not even paying attention for the first 59.5 minutes because it was boring to me. I wasn't inspired. Those words didn't move me. And 30 seconds ago in the class, the rabbi said that if you focus your life on materialism, you never, ever will have any meaning or purpose in your life. And he closed the Chumash, and he looks right at me, and I think the rabbi's a mind reader, because that's all I thought about for that first 15.5 minutes was his house and the stuff in the house. And I walked up to Rabbi Bronstein, and I said, Rabbi, you inspired me at the end of the class. I'm starved for inspiration as my playing days now ended. I have no playbook. I have no coach. I have no team. I have no locker room. I have no schedule. I have no itinerary. Are you telling me that this book is about inspiration? He said, exactly what I'm telling you. It's a battery pack to make your life supercharged. I said, wow. I had no idea. He said, come next week. I have another class. And I'll bring you your first Chumash. So I go next week. He gives me my first Chumash. And I go for 7 years to this class, and over those years he gave me some other books. And I still study all those books today. The Loss of Lashon Hara. Are you kidding me? How am I supposed to know how to speak if I don't open up a book and learn how to speak? How am I supposed to be as a man if I don't open up the Torah and I learn how to be? But I hid all that information inside of me for 7 years. Then my wife meets a Rebbitzin, and the Rebbitzin invites her and my family to a Chabad house. She buys me a pair of tefillin. And every Friday night after that point, we started going to somebody's house for Shabbos. And on Saturday night, my wife and I would go out with friends. And Friday night and Saturday night were completely different experiences. As Friday night, I was truly inspired by the words of Torah. But Saturday night, the conversation always seemed to focus on money and business and vacations and country clubs and a vacation house and a new car and a new watch. And it made me sad to hear these words every Saturday night by some of my friends. But Friday night I was fired up and inspired. And I realized that I had to make a change in my life. And I couldn't do it halfway. I don't know how to do it halfway. You play the game of tennis, you're very successful at the net. You're very successful at the back line. You go to mid-court, you're finished. I couldn't do it halfway. I had to do it all the way. And I said to my family, I'm now Sabbath observant. I wasn't thinking about my wife. I wasn't thinking about my kids. But they were watching me. They were watching everything I was doing. Could you imagine going through your life for almost 40 years one way and all of a sudden you decide, I'm now Sabbath observant? Are you kidding me? This is not how you grew up, Alan. Why are you doing this? You're an ex-NFL party guy, man. Why are you doing it? And I didn't know what else to say other than I like it. It makes me feel good. And really, for the sake of the heat, I'll just close with one story. Because this heat's reminding me of NFL training camps, and it's like a nightmare. My father, of blessed memory, when he saw me wearing a yarmulke, said, what are you doing, son? This is just 10 years ago. I said, Dad, I'm inspired. You should come to synagogue, Dad. You should meet my rabbi friend. He said, it's not for me, and don't push it on me. My father and I, back some years ago, would get together every single Wednesday for a father and son lunch. Now that I'm Shomer Shabbos and keeping kosher, he'd go to kosher restaurants with me every single Wednesday. And every Wednesday, he'd pull out my football card out of his pocket and put it on the table as he was that proud of me. And if you want one, they sell them on eBay for 39 cents. And I'd always tell my dad, take the football card off the table, Dad. It's not that important that the waiter or waitress knows who I am. But I'm so proud of you, son. I said, Dad, that was some 8, 9, 10, 11 years ago. Dad, do me a favor. Come for supper Friday night. I want you to taste and experience what I'm experiencing. I told you, son, it's not for me. Don't push it on me. So I'd asked my dad for 1.5 years, and he said no for 1.5 years. I won't come Friday night. I won't come for Kiddush. Don't ask. I'm not coming, but I'll meet you Wednesday. Being somewhat of a salesman, I thought I had to use some trickery or magic or present myself a little differently. So I said to my dad, I can't meet you next Wednesday. I got a big business meeting. But I can meet you Wednesday night if you'd like for dinner. We can meet Thursday night if you want. I can even meet you Friday night. He said, don't be a wise guy with the Friday night. He said, I'll meet you Wednesday night. I said, good, because it's Rosh Hashanah. And I said, Dad, we're having a community dinner now, a little synagogue in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and you got a seat right next to me. He said, okay, I'll go, stop asking me. And he came. And the next week we got together for a father and son lunch, and he reaches into his pocket, he takes out a check, and he slides it across the table, and I pushed it back. I don't want your money, Dad. He said, it's not for you. I said, I got your dinner last week, Dad. I'm not taking your money. He said, it's not for you. I said, then who's it for? He said, I spent some time with your rabbi friend, and I like what I heard. Give it to him. And I said, you're giving the rabbi charity, Dad? Give him the money. So I felt a moment of weakness. I said, Dad, most of the guys I know come to synagogue on Shabbos for the Kiddush. They just come for the Kiddush. Why don't you come just for the Kiddush on Shabbos and spend some time with me and the family? He said, I'll come for the Kiddush. What time? I said, noon. He strolls in on noon the first Shabbos. He sits down. He has a l'chaim with the rabbi and a beautiful lunch with us. He comes the next Shabbos, and the next Shabbos, and the fourth Shabbos he walks in the little downtown Chabad of Fort Lauderdale. We're sitting with 9 men. The Torah never came out as we need 10. And my dad walked in, the rabbi jumped up and wrapped a tallis around him and called him up to the bima and gave him an aliyah. And after his aliyah, he came and sat in the front row, and he cried like a baby, and I felt his neshama, his soul was on fire. And the next week we got together for our father and son lunch. And he says, I wanted you to hear some words from me. I said, what's that, Dad? He reaches out and grabs my hands and listens to these words. I was so proud of you as a Green Bay Packer. That helmet that you put on your head was the greatest 5 years of my life, son. And all those trips you sent me to Green Bay and the nights we would go out with your teammates and those steaks and beers were the greatest days of my life. I said, Dad, I know, but it was a long time ago. And that Dallas Cowboy run, wow. I'll never forget the party you took me to after Super Bowl 27. You remember how we stayed up all night, we partied with your entire team? I said, I remember, Dad. Wow, is that great. I was so proud of you, son, with that star on your helmet. And he pulls me even closer and he says, but I want you to know something. I'm more proud of you today with a yarmulke on your head than I ever was with those football helmets on your head. I said, Dad, there are no words you can tell me greater than those. I believe every single one of us are living truly amazing, amazing lives. Quite often as an offensive lineman, people would think we would look down the field, but we never would look down the field. We would never focus our eyes on the end zone or the goalposts. To be truly successful in the football field, we would focus on the inch. How often do we see the referee look over at the head coach and say, Coach, you just need an inch for the first down. As a lineman, we knew to be successful, we had to move the ball down the field inch by inch. And I believe it's the same thing about being a Jew. With Torah and mitzvahs, inch by inch growth every single day, we'll score that ultimate touchdown so long as we do it slowly every single day. And I wish every single one of you unbounded success and joy in all that you do, and it's certainly been a pleasure for me to be here.
Questions? He's here to give the answers.
Well, I can give the answer, but you don't ask me some questions. No questions. Questions? Comments? No comments. How about questions?
Actually, I have one. Were the few Jewish players in the NFL, were you guys buddies? Like you had a little, like Harris Barton, for example, right? On the 49ers. He was a Jew, right?
Yes. Great question. And I forget this quite often. So when the game's ended, what do you do as an offensive line when the game's ended? You go across the field, you look for the guy that you banged heads with for 3 hours, and you wish him, a good season, nice game, have a good year, see you later. Good chance you're playing them again, and you don't want any enemies in the NFL, trust me. But every single time when I played in the National Football League, I knew who the other Jew was on the other team. Well, how did I know? Because some Jew in this country would always send me the Jewish press clippings. Listen to 5 or 6 Jews. The NFL has a law that says only 5 Jews can play in the league. It seems like every year there's 5 Jews in the NFL for whatever reason, demographics, that's how it works out. But when the games ended and you saw 2 Jews always coming together midfield, if we knew the word Shalom Aleichem, we would say Shalom Aleichem, but we'd always shake hands and feel a sense of camaraderie. And you want to hear an amazing stat? Mike, maybe you can help me out with this because I forget one of the players. There were 6 Jews with Super Bowl rings that played in the National Football League. I'm not talking about owners or doctors or marketing people. 6 Jews, and I'm certainly one of them. And out of the 6, you won't believe this, 2 are Torah observant. And I'm in touch with him. We speak probably every other month. John Frank, who played for the 49ers next to Harris Barton. And he lives in New York, relocating to California. He's a doctor. He goes back and forth, and we speak all the time. But it's unbelievable, that number, 2 out of 6. That's a very, very high percentage. And I know everybody knows about Tim Tebow and how he took the world by storm. But the NFL is filled with so much religion. Every team I was ever a part of had either a athletes in action person, a fellowship of Christian athletes person, a father or some religious person connected to the team to teach them the Bible. And every Thursday night they'd get together and learn Bible. And it's no surprise today, going back to the rabbi's words, why Emmitt Smith is a frum Christian today. Why many of my teammates, whether it's Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, guys that hit the pinnacle of success, become religious people. Reggie White today, if anybody knows who Reggie White is, and I'll send you a link that will blow your mind. He passed away some years ago. He was the Minister of Defense, the greatest defensive lineman probably played ever in the National Football League, a real religious Christian. When he retired, he started to learn the Torah because he wasn't happy with the interpretation in his Christian Bible. And if you send me a message, I'll send you the link, and you'll see ESPN interviewing his wife saying, we weren't coming Jewish, but you see Reggie White reading the Torah with a rabbi he befriended in Israel. It's an amazing thing. Any other questions? I think you're ready for a shower.
One thing is people don't know Alan Veingrad is Shlomo. And the introduction you were given all had to do with Shlomo. I don't know if you were aware.
Shlomo Zalman.
Shlomo is here.
Shlomo Zalman. So anyway, okay, thank you.